What's up, everybody? Welcome to the show. We all know today's guests. Brandon Turner. This guy's been around GoBundance for a little while. He was on a podcast too. I don't remember the name, but I think it's in his bio. So we'll figure it out as I read his bio. He is the founder and managing member of Open Door Capital, best-selling real estate author, and widely recognized as one of the foremost experts on real estate investing. Over the past decade, Brandon has established a strong track record investing in multifamily, including apartments and mobile home park assets. He was also the host of the BiggerPockets That's what it was. Most downloaded real estate podcast in the world with well over 100 million downloads. Brandon, welcome.
Wow. That was an amazing introduction. It's almost like I wrote it for you.
Well, and I love that you have one of the foremost experts on real estate investing in there. So
okay,
yeah,
I did not actually write that. My assistant probably wrote that. I don't know where you got that from, but we're going to blame Matt for that one. Sure. I'm also the janitor at, I was a janitor at BiggerPockets for a good decade. And it's been a good run. It was a good run. And now I'm just hanging out in Hawaii watching Judge Judy every day. It's really good. Yeah, that's all I do.
And stripping. We talked about that.
We do a lot of stuff. In fact, we took a photo a few minutes ago before starting the recording of a very provocative photo in which you commented on the color of my nipples. So if people want to look at that photo, you better be following Jamie over on Instagram. Yeah. Otherwise, you're not going to see it. So that's my plug right there. What's your Instagram handle?
At the Jamie Gruber.
There it is.
Jamie Gruber.
Right? All right. There it is. Go follow him. All right.
That's right. I think there's another Jamie Gruber out there, but let's start there. Not with your nipples.
We should beat him up. Like it's like a prison yard thing. You can't have two that are like the alpha male. You can't have two. Yeah, no, not going to work.
Send him threatening DMs.
There we go. This is a great idea.
So we're gonna start not with nipples. Okay. We'll end there.
We're here. Yeah, this train is off the tracks. All right.
But let's start with the BiggerPockets podcast. So you recently left. And we're recording this early February 2022. You ended, I think the last one you recorded was late December, maybe a broadcast recently. I'm not even sure, to be honest with you, but that's a big decision, man. You were a stalwart there, man. You were the BiggerPockets podcast in my estimation. I'll just say that for me. I can't say that for everybody. David's amazing too. But
thanks, man.
What was the decision there? Like why? Let's start with why leave.
Yeah. Why leave? A couple of reasons. Number one, so first of all, I'll say this, I love BiggerPockets, always have, always will. I mean, I got my start. I didn't start BiggerPockets, the website. Josh Dorkin did. I started the podcast with Josh, and then continued it after Josh left. So, the best way I can say it is this: like my personal real estate and wealth building path has closely followed and been intertwined with BiggerPockets for the last decade. And it's been an amazing thing. I was what you would call an entrepreneur inside BiggerPockets. So I started just editing blog posts, but I was just like build stuff like, hey, let's do a podcast. And then Josh was like, all right. And we did that. And it was like, hey, let's do webinars. And we did that. And I would build these little systems inside BiggerPockets. Now in the beginning, I didn't know anything about marketing or business or computers or internet companies or tech or anything. I didn't know anything, but I just figured it out. And I found I had a knack for it. And I really love BiggerPockets. I mean, they're helping millions of people achieve wealth and financial freedom. The problem with the podcast, now I phased out of almost every area of BiggerPockets that I had been in. In fact, I heard a quote, and this actually probably changed my life more than almost any other quote in the world. And I don't even remember who said it, but it was a billionaire who was asked the question, why are you so successful? And his answer was, because I'm a quitter. And the interviewer said, well, what do you mean? He said, because everything I do in my business, I find a way to quit it so someone better than me can do it, and I can move on to the next thing. And so I took that as like my mission at BiggerPockets is I would build something and then quit it and get somebody else to do it who is better. I'm really actually not very good at anything. So the one thing I never could quit was the podcast, because I love the podcast. I love interviewing people. I love talking to people. So what finally happened was I just got to the point where I was spending so much time. We're doing 2 podcasts a week. We're going to bump up to 3, maybe 4. And it takes a lot of prep work and time. And I got 2 little kids at home. And I was like, I started just feeling that pressure of like trying to balance kids and family. And then Open Door Capital, which is my real estate company, we'll probably talk about that later, just blew up like in a way that I would never expect it. I was hoping to buy, like my big, hairy, audacious goal was $50 million of real estate by the end of 2021. We ended up closing the year at $300 million in real estate. And most of that came the final year. Like it just like hockey stick curved up. So here I am trying to balance Open Door Capital's wildly successful investment company, family life, surfing, jujitsu, and the podcast. And after almost a decade of the podcast, I finally decided I'm going to take a little break. And I was like, I'm just going to take like a month off. And once I tore away my identity from the BiggerPockets identity, just a month, like I told myself a month, and within like a few minutes of saying that and being like, okay, yeah, I'm going to take a month off, because I'd never really taken any time off. All of a sudden it was like, oh, like I'm my own person. And then there's BiggerPockets. I could maybe take 3 months off. What if I did that? What if maybe they don't really need me? Because sometimes in a business, like we feel we're so important and like, oh, they need me. They don't need me. I mean, yeah, people like me on the podcast, but now since I've left, BiggerPockets podcast actually dramatically improved. It's now the number 2 business podcast in the world, behind only Dave Ramsey, which is nuts. And that's since that hurts my ego a little because they're doing better now that I'm gone, but it just shows like I wasn't that important. So anyway, identity ripped away. And I was like, what if I just took like a year off? What if I just took indefinitely off and just said, hey, I can always go back and jump in, but what if I just focus on family and focus on open door capital and a little bit of jujitsu? And that felt really good. It felt light. Have you heard that phrase, light and heavy? Jason Drees talks about that. Changed my life. Is this concept of, does it feel light or does it feel heavy? So does it feel light? Meaning like when you think about that action or that task, does it feel like, oh, yeah, that feels good? Or does it feel like, oh, like I can tell you, and it's not hard or easy, right? When like I got a contractor buddy from back in Washington State where I used to live, and he's been trying to talk to me for the last couple of days. And every time I see that text of like, hey, are you free right now to talk? I'm like, oh, heavy, even though it's a super simple thing. Like it's super easy, but it's heavy. But if it was like, hey, can you analyze this 87 unit apartment complex? I'd be like, yeah, that feels good. It feels light. So anyway, so it finally just, when I thought about leaving the podcast, leaving the internet education world, and just focusing on family and open door capital, I just felt light. And that's just when I feel light, that's what I want to move toward.
That's interesting, because I think about, when you talk about identity shift, like, my story is I was an employee forever and I identified as this executive and growing through this company and everything else like that. And then having to sever that and change that was the hardest thing I've ever done, but the best thing I feel I've ever done. How would you advise somebody on that? Like when they're at a point where they can feel that things are a little bit heavy and maybe something else that they've built or something they're going toward is light. Is it sitting down and kind of auditing, well, what happens if I stepped away? I don't know. Like, I struggle with like, how did I get there? I went through breakdowns to get there, right? Like it was in tears, like what's wrong? I can't sleep and all that. I mean, it doesn't sound like you went through that. It sounds like you went through a fairly, I don't want to say it was an easy process, but for you, it was just sort of here's a consideration. Then you grew on that. How would you advise somebody on that identity shift to change their life and grow in a different direction?
Yeah, a couple of things. One comes from Tim Ferriss. He says in the 4-Hour Workweek something about doing a like worst case scenario analysis. I think is what he called it, or something like that, right?
Fear setting.
Yeah. So it's like, what's the worst thing that would happen? Like, tell me your worst fears. Like, you end up like losing your house and your job and your dog and your girl runs away. Like it was like this whole like thing, right? And in reality, the worst case scenario is usually not very bad. So that's the first thing is think about like what really could happen if you left. Like, could you get another job again, doing something similar? And if you're feeling heavy at the job anyway, but you're making good money, could you survive on less money? So first of all, that worst case scenario analysis I like doing. Number 2 is I worked through my issues with a performance coach. So my coach is Jason Drees. I think you've talked to him before as well. Jason, and I have talked for 5 years now. And so I didn't do it alone. And that would be the advice is don't do it alone. Like find a friend, a mentor, a performance coach, a therapist, even find somebody to work through that, because it is a process to work through. And then the third thing is, like I said earlier, I had to rip that identity away just an inch. Like I didn't have to separate a mile. I just had to rip it an inch. So for me, it was take a month off. Maybe that's the same for you. Take a month off. Maybe it's take 3 months off, but just tearing the identity a little bit oftentimes then leads to, like, I could not have gone from Brandon on the podcast every single week, never misses an episode, to I'm 100% not on the podcast anymore. That was too big of a break for me. Just like for you, it was probably too big of a break to go from Jamie, the executive, the guy who's been at the company forever, to entrepreneur. It's such a huge tear that it's, if you can find a way to make the tear smaller, it's better. And I actually did that at BiggerPockets. Honestly, like over the last several years, I have been tearing that more and more. Like I stopped being an executive. In fact, I stepped down from like leadership a year ago, where I was like, I literally said to the team, I was like, I don't want to go to meetings anymore. Just period. If it's a meeting, I would not like to be there. And they were like, oh, okay. that's cool. And I was like, really? And they're like, yeah, I mean, if you don't like it, don't do it. And I was like, okay. So like it had already started like a year ago where I stepped out of the leadership and I was just the podcast guy. So anyway, you can step down. You don't have to tear it all at once.
When you made this decision, and that's great advice, by the way, and actually it resonates a lot with when I think about what ended up happening for me. It was all those things. I just did it through chaos and craziness, which is my general way of being. Right?
Yeah.
Jesus. But for you, when you made that decision finally, what was the hardest conversation you had to have with who?
Oh man, Josh Dorkin. So even though Josh had already left, so Josh was the founder of BiggerPockets back in the day. But actually I told Josh and Scott, who is CEO now, BiggerPockets, I told, and Scott is one of my best friends, Josh, one of my best friends. I love these guys to death. But I actually told them in person while they were sitting on my front porch, or my lanai, as we call it here in Hawaii. We're just sitting there chatting. And yeah, that was like, my heart was like, again, Josh had already left several years ago. So it wasn't like I was doing anything inappropriate or crazy. Like I was just doing what he did. But I just knew it was going to rock the boat quite a bit. But here's the truth about BiggerPockets and about everyone listening, about wherever you find yourself, whether you're an entrepreneur or you're working at a business, like it is very hard to grow a business that is completely dependent upon one person, to be the linchpin, as the Seth Godin calls it. Like being a linchpin is amazing. Like I was a linchpin at BiggerPockets. I could command what I wanted. I could say, I don't want to go to meetings anymore. And like, what are they going to do? Right. Because like I'm such an important person. There's a great book out there called So Good They Can't Ignore You by what's his name? So Good They Can't Ignore You.
Oh, that one.
Anyway, so good. I can't remember the name. So good they can't ignore you. It's all about just becoming that person that a company relies on. Now, as an employee, amazing position to be in, because you can ask for a lot. You can truly get a 4-hour work week if you are so good that they can't lose you at any company whatsoever, which is why I push so hard. And David Green is the same way. And I know you are as well. Be so good at your job that you are indispensable. Like really, like it, rather than when people are thinking financial freedom, what the natural inclination of people I know tend to do is they tend to get really crappy at their job. They like check out and they're like, well, I'm just going to, do the bare minimum just to escape by because I don't like this crappy job anyway. I say the opposite. Become amazing at your job and you can negotiate for flexibility. Anyway,
Cal Newport, by the way. Cal Newport.
Thank you. Cal Newport. Every book he's written has been amazing. But like Deep Work and Digital Minimalism and all that. But So Good They Can't Ignore You is one of my favorites. And anyway, so being a linchpin as an employee is an amazing position to be in. But as a business owner, having a linchpin in your company sucks. So, so I own part of BiggerPockets. I have some equity in the company. I'm a part owner. As an owner, having me as an employee linchpin sucks because it's really hard to sell a company. It's really hard to scale. It traps that person into, and they can do it. If they get hit by a bus, you're in big trouble, right? So I look at it like I kind of shift my head from like employee to owner standpoint. And I had to get out as an employee so BiggerPockets could stand on their own 2 legs, or whatever you want to call it, 4 legs if you think of BiggerPockets as an animal, and run by themselves. And I had to rip that Band-Aid off at some point because I just can't be the guy forever, right? Dave Ramsey, I think, is going through the same thing right now. Dave Ramsey's like an older guy, right? He's not going to want to work forever. But what happens to DaveRamsey.com when Dave Ramsey is no longer at DaveRamsey.com? It's a problem. And so I've seen what they've been doing. They've been bringing in more people, and I don't know how effective it's going to be, but when you build a business around one person, it's just dangerous and risky. So what I've seen now in the past few months is just BiggerPockets flourish without me, which means the company itself is the asset, not a person. So if you're an entrepreneur out there, like you should not be the linchpin. No employee should be the linchpin. Try not to let that happen if at all possible, because it slows you down.
Yeah. That makes total sense. I love that point. And to your point about like, when you're transitioning, I always say this, when I left my job, I did it at a point in time when I was high performing. I had systematized my way really down to very few hours a week, even in that role. Like I figured out ways to kind of like limit the amount of time I needed to spend. And honestly, like, for people that are like lamenting, I just can't wait to get away from this day job. It's like, man, if you're working for a BiggerPockets or whomever, right? They probably have processes, systems, ways of hiring, all of that stuff that are really valuable to know and maybe borrow a bit, not like their specific things, but like, how do they write out a process? Where do they house it? Like, how do they develop this? What's their governance process look like? Like all of that stuff is great. If you're thinking, okay, I'm building something, I'm going to leave this one day. Well, look where you are right now, because they've got it figured out in order to be the company they are, and learn from that. Use that as like, okay, this is my market research for when I create my business. And that's one of the key aspects. Like, well, there's a linchpin here to your point, and this person's at the top. Like, without them, everything fails. Like, I can't do that in my company. So that's good learning that you can take from being there, which I love.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, well, I was going to expand on that as one thing. Like, yeah, when you're at a job, I'll just reinforce this. When you're at a career job, you haven't left yet, you haven't gone into entrepreneurship or full-time real estate or whatever you're going to do. Yeah, like that is the time to learn and really soak in and become amazing at because you're getting paid to learn and to become amazing at it versus trying to make those mistakes on your own. Like, I could not have built Open Door Capital to what will likely be billions of dollars of real estate down the road without having, or maybe I could have, but I would have made a ton of mistakes and lost a bunch of investor money and all that had I not made those mistakes and learned those lessons while getting paid to do it through BiggerPockets. So I learned about hiring and about marketing and about systems and processes and people and what works and what doesn't, and how to inspire and how to fire and how to do all that stuff. I learned it while getting paid to do it. And then I took that and now I built another company very quickly because I had that. So a job gets a bad rap sometimes, right? A job gets a bad rap is in our world of like, oh, jobs suck. No, a job is an amazing thing if you look at it as a tool and as a learning process and as something you can grow. If you look at it as a means to getting a paycheck, yeah, jobs suck. But if even if you could be delivering pizzas at Domino's, I don't care. If you look at your Domino's delivery job as a way to learn systems and process, I mean, the way that Domino's has nailed that system of delivering pizza to people in 30 minutes, like what an incredible, like $1 billion lesson that you get paid to learn.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, your crappy, $10 an hour job is suddenly now $1 million an hour job of what it's going to give you.
One thing you mentioned in there, and I want to talk about Open Door Capital, like in the this is me. I'm going to go everywhere, but I want to talk about marketing. You learned about marketing. I know how passionate you are about marketing, and the reason I want to talk about marketing is as I'm looking up Cal Newport for this book, there's a missed text or a text notice on my phone from Brandon Turner behind the beard. I got that just now as we're talking. Right?
Yeah. So that's funny. Yeah, you just got my email.
That's it. So that's marketing is something I think is appropriate. That's like a signal to be like, all right, let's talk about that first. Then we'll get into Open Door Capital and some other things. Yeah. What is it that you learned in your time at BiggerPockets about marketing versus maybe what you naturally are inclined to be as a marketer? Where did was it developed? I know there's like 8 questions in there, but just talk about you know, your marketing prowess and maybe how it was developed at BiggerPockets or the other way around. Yeah.
I got a great answer for this. So the thing that I learned from Josh Dorkin, I learned a lot from Josh Dorkin. Josh is an amazing entrepreneur who started BiggerPockets. But the thing I learned, and honestly, I don't even know if he knew this when he started BiggerPockets, but he did it. And that is when you focus first and primarily on building your audience, the like and trust and the brand, like the audience, the people that follow you, before you work on monetization, you can do anything you want. Like when you have millions of people who know, like, and trust you, you can do whatever you want. And so many companies out there, so many companies out there have cool products, cannot sell them because they don't have an audience. They don't have anybody who likes them. So you might go build this amazing mousetrap and you're like, this is the coolest mousetrap. Look at how it does. And you're like, hey, you should buy it. And everyone's like, all right, there's lots of mousetraps out there. Have a good day. And like, it's just noise. You're just noise. But when you have an audience of people who know, like, and trust you, like BiggerPockets has a diehard audience of people who know, like, and trust everything that we do over there. And I personally now have an audience of people who know, like, and trust me. If I wanted to sell coffee, I can sell coffee. I literally have a coffee brand now. That has nothing to do with real estate, but people know, like, and trust me. So they buy Beardy Brew coffee, beardybrew.com. Get yours today. All profits go to charity. True story. But like, I can do that because people know, like, and trust me. When I say, hey, I've got a great real estate deal and I've got thousands of people who see my life and how I do things, they then fund my deals. And so marketing, what I've learned is really like at its core, is getting a lot of people to know, like, and trust you. And there's a million ways to do that, right? Like I'm good on camera or at least good on microphones. Like I like talking. Maybe I talk too much, but therefore I build my audience through those mediums. Now, some people might be really good at writing. They might build their audience that way and build a trust and credibility through writing blog posts or writing articles in the newspaper or whatever, right? Other people are really good at direct mail marketing, maybe to build it, like doing paid sources, like whatever it is that you like, oh yeah, I get fired up by that thing, then focus on that thing. And if you can get people to know, like, and trust you, can do whatever you want. And that's really like the power behind Open Door Capital, is that just millions of people know, like, and trust me. So when I'm like, hey, I got a $80 million apartment building, anybody want to help me fund it? It was like 36 hours later, we had funded the whole thing. It was nuts. Like, we raised like $25 million in cash in like 3 days or something like that, or 2 days. It was nuts because they know, like, and trust me. So that was the core marketing, is focus on those systems and processes, which is, to go full circle here, what you mentioned a minute ago, you got that text message from me. Now, for those who don't know what you're talking about, I have a text message newsletter that goes out every single week. It's called Behind the Beard, right? I send out like what book I'm reading. I send out something that I can like teach, just some kind of thing that I'm like, oh yeah, this is a cool thing I can talk about. Usually a random picture I just took from my phone that week, just something that makes people smile, makes me laugh, makes a point of some kind. And then a few other things in there, right? I answer some Q&A questions. Now, why do I do that? Because I know that down the road, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years down the road, if I have millions of people's phone numbers and the ability to text them anytime I want to, now I'm not going to spam them, but when I have a deal I need to raise money for, guess how I'm going to do that? Through the text letter. And every week, because I'm providing value to people, I'm not asking for anything, I'm just giving people value, then they know, like, and trust me. And then I can use that in the future. And so that's marketing 101 in Brandon Turner
School. An affinity-based brand, right? Is what you did. How like, you started out as a blogger, if I'm not mistaken, right? You had a blog, a website, Wealth Under 30, something like that. I probably butchered that, but
real estate in your 20s.
Real estate in your 20s.
Still there. I haven't updated it in a year or 10 years, but yeah, still there.
I knew it was under 30 something, but how was there intent behind that? Or was it just something that served who you were and something you enjoyed doing? Like, why did you start it? Like, what was that? Like, is that a natural inclination? Like, oh, hey, I could leverage marketing to build real estate investors and eventually, building a real estate investing pool and eventually raise capital. I mean, were you thinking about that in your 20s, or was it like, I really enjoy putting out content and helping people and sharing and it serves my personality, so you went with it? I'm kind of curious what that was.
Yeah, when I was 27 years old, I achieved like level 1 financial freedom. Now, when I say level 1 financial freedom, I mean like the ability to pay your basic bills. Now, that to me was about $3,000 a month, and I did it through rental property. So I bought like a duplex, a single family house, a triplex, another couple single families, fourplex, I think a 5-unit, and then a 24-unit. And so I had like 35-ish units, and I sold a few of them in that process. But I basically had like 35 units, each making around $100 a month in profit each unit. And so total units gave me about $3,000 a month, a little over in profit. So now I quit my job. I was working at a bank before that, quit my job, and I sat on the couch, kind of like I jokingly do right now. Like, I was jobless, and I was like, well, what do I do now? And I don't even know. This is a true story. I started downloading, illegally downloading ebooks from like one of those BitTorrent sites like Kazaa or one of those things. Remember those back in the day? Like, yeah. Like I just typed in like, I think I typed in like get rich quick or something stupid, probably like that, or make money online or something like that. I was just like, cause I'm like 27, I'm sitting at home, I'm still doing the real estate thing, but I was like, I got a lot of free time. How do I make money just sitting here on my couch? And I started downloading these I think 4-Hour Workweek I downloaded. I've since bought it, Tim. If you're listening to this, I have since bought your book, but I think I downloaded the 4-Hour Workweek and read that. And so I got really excited about the idea of internet entrepreneurship. Now, some people read a book like 4-Hour Workweek and they don't get excited about internet entrepreneurship at all. But for me, there's just like this fire in my belly. I was like, oh, I get it. Oh, that fires me up. So for whatever weird reason in life, I was drawn to internet marketing as a business. So I started a couple ideas and nothing really panned out. And I thought, well, what am I good at that I could teach? That maybe later on I could sell like an ebook or something like that. And the idea was real estate. And I was like, well, everyone does real estate, and BiggerPockets is out there. And there's a few other big ones that were, bigger than BiggerPockets at the time. And I was like, so how do I compete with that? Well, I need to be more specific, which goes to a second point, by the way, about marketing, is never market to everyone. Try to be the cross point between two niches. So it wasn't just I'm the real estate guy. I was the real estate guy for young people. You see, all of a sudden then I'm like, people who are young and wanted real estate, they're like, oh, that's my guy because he's so specific. Like the riches are the niches, they say, right? By being specific in your marketing, you are much more likely than just being super broad. It's the same with anything, right? If I went to you and I was like, Jamie, I want a job. And you're like, okay, well, what are you looking for? I'm like, anything. You'd be like, okay, well, good luck. But if I was like, hey, I'm looking for a job at like a hospital because I'm a nurse somewhere in like the Detroit area, you'd start going, oh, how do I help this guy? Who do I know that works at a hospital? Right. So being specific makes people more likely to work with you. The same is true for marketing. So anyway, I did real estate in your 20s. And I started blogging and I sold a calculator. This is my grand scheme for making money. I was going to sell a calculator for $19 for a spreadsheet on how to analyze a rental property. And I still, 10 years later, I've not even touched the website, not even logged on in 10 years. And I still sell like one calculator a week. So I'm making like $20 a week right now off of that website. Yeah, look at me rolling in it.
But people are still visiting it. That's amazing. So did it sell a bunch when it was in its heyday?
No, not really. I think I never made more than maybe $500 in a month. But I remember this. This is what changed a little bit. A guy calls me one time. Well, he emails me and he says, hey, my name is Chris Guthrie with, I think the website at the time was makemoneyontheinternet.com. He has since had multiple businesses after that, but it was Chris Guthrie with makemoneyontheinternet.com. Well, that was one of like the blogs that I like consumed and like read all the time. And here he is reaching out to little Brandon for advice about real estate. And my mind was blown. Like, this is a celebrity. It's like Tom Cruise basically is emailing me and he wants to know about real estate. Right. And then I realized like that having a blog is more than making $19 on a calculator. It's about relationship. It's about reaching people and building, like, at least that's a big piece of it, is reaching people and building deeper relationships with people, especially people who are, who I can work with in the future in some ways. Anyway, me and actually Chris became really good friends over the years. We've done, a ton of stuff together. He's amazing. But that was a big piece of it when I realized that there was more than just some dollars to be made. And that actually led me to become friends with Josh Dorkin. I built a relationship with Josh Dorkin, which led to the podcast, which led to you and me becoming friends, which led to this moment right here. So it all came down to all my entire life. Yeah,
all the milestones. All the major milestones.
They have all led to this very moment right here. It's my peak of my life right here, man. This is good.
Sad. I feel now bad for you if that's the case, but I appreciate you saying that. So have you ever read The Big Leap, Gay Hendricks?
I have the book sitting on my shelf and I have not read it. I wonder if I have it because of you.
Amazing book. Maybe I am talking to him tomorrow. He's going to be coming on the podcast.
Look at you.
Incredible guy. Incredible author.
It's about time you got some good guests on here. I mean, you got to put up with guys like me.
Yeah. He's not hairy, which I appreciate.
I know.
Right? Like, I kind of have this thing.
Yeah. You can borrow some of mine if you want, if you ever need.
I should. I actually went as hairless as possible.
Okay,
so
good.
we could have a major contrast in your naked nipple photo. This is that I'm about to post right after this. Right?
Okay, good. I'm glad.
But he has this, the book is about going from your zone of excellence to your zone of genius. And I feel like when I look at your trajectory, I mean, we talked prior to going from where your net worth is to, or was to where it is now quickly in 2-3 years. Right. And like you said, it's kind of a range of depending on valuations and all that stuff, but still you've scaled and have grown so fast over the last few years, granted with a lot of foundational work over the past 6-7 prior to that. Right. So it's that hockey stick thing that you talked about, but you're in your zone of genius. I feel like. What would you describe that as for you? What is your zone of genius? What is your superpower? What is your special gift that you give the world? Sure. How would you define that?
Yeah, I'll explain it this way. If you're listening to this right now and you have the ability to grab a pen and paper and write these 4, I'm going to give you 4 words to write down or 4 phrases. This is something I've been thinking a lot about over the last 6 months on what did I do different with this, like Open Door Capital than everything else. And this is kind of the framework I've come up with. Number 1. So the most people, when they start anything new, any kind of business, they start at what I call the DIY level. I can do it myself. Like when I got into real estate, I did my own painting. I found my own deals. I did everything myself. There's nothing wrong with DIY, but that's what people do. If you wanted it today, let's say you were going to go start a business and the business was door-to-door selling of vacuum cleaners. You just believe that vacuums are the future and door-to-door selling vacuums are a big deal. A DIY mindset person And this is most people in the world, because most people are employees. And what do employees do? They do the things. They're the DIYers of the company. Right. Yeah. They're the front line. So they take the knowledge of their job and they go apply it to their entrepreneurship thing or whatever. So they're going to go door to door and haul that vacuum door to door, and they're going to go sell that vacuum. The next level, though, that people then sometimes move up to, not always, and sometimes people start, is what I call the project manager level. So we have DIY as the first one. Second one is project manager. A project manager is somebody who like grabs another person to go do the actual task for them. So for example, hey, buddy from college, come over here and go door to door and sell this vacuum. I'll line up the appointments for you. I'll take care of all this stuff. It's just kind of us figuring it out, but you're the one actually doing it. So I'll give an example in the real estate space. I hired my mother-in-law at one point to answer phone calls. It was still I was still doing everything, but I was like, I'm tired of answering phone calls from tenants. So Rachel, you handle all tenant interactions and I don't want to do it anymore. I'll pay you $500 a month. Perfect. That's me being a project manager, right? Or if you're like a house flipper, you might start subbing out a bunch of hire a bunch of contractors. You make sure they're doing their job, but you're really like in charge. Like you're there, and like when they don't show up, you're over there painting the wall because they didn't show up. Next, I call them, these are mindsets, I guess, mindset levels. And the next one I call the COO, like Chief Operating Officer. So what does a COO of a company do? They typically establish a team. Like there's a team, and there's like a hierarchy. There's employees. There's an HR manager. There's probably a director. Like they build a team. So now door-to-door salesman, this is how, now you might move up in your door-to-door salesman company to build the team to get the COO level, or if you were a COO mindset level at another career or another job, you might come in and right away from day one do that. Example, you were a COO here, so now you're going to go start a vacuum company. The first thing you do is you go hire an HR person, you hire a director of the sales, you hire 3 salesmen, and you hire a bookkeeper, right? And then you rent a building, you put them all in there, and then you're just meeting with them every week. And you run, like from day one, you never even touch a vacuum cleaner. You are the COO of that company. You show up to work every day, 9 to 5, and you run a very good company. Nothing wrong with COO level. All these levels are fine. There's nothing wrong with any of them. The fourth level, though, is something, and this is where it answers your question.
Oh, intrigued. I
call it the architect level. So the architect, and not so much the architect, I was like designing buildings, but more of the architect from like the Matrix. If you remember the Matrix, the architect was like the one that like designed the whole thing. Like the architect is like, this is what I want to have happen. And it just happens. Some examples of great architects in the world would be like Richard Branson. Richard Branson owns 150 some companies, or that, I'm sure that fluctuates all the time. Like he doesn't meet every week with his director of operations of his random XYZ company that, he just like says, I want this done, and it gets done. Now, another great example of an architect, David Osborne. Right now, it's no coincidence that David has learned a lot, from Richard Branson, because that's just what people do. But another great example is David is an architect. He has like the idea, like, I think a podcast would be great, and he goes and buys a podcast, or he's like, hey, I think this company would be cool. He might go buy that company, or he'll go and hire a CEO or a COO to go and build that company. You see, like that's an architect. An architect doesn't do a whole lot of anything other than they at a very, very high level. So let me pull this all together. So you got DIY, you have a project manager level, you have a COO level, and you have this like architect or visionary, some people might call it, like this person that just like sees it and gets it and makes it happen. Now, I said this before, and I'll say it again, no level is bad. There's nothing wrong with any of the levels. However, every level has a limit, like at how high you can go. You will never become a multimillionaire, like, 10, 20, $50 million being a DIYer selling vacuum cleaners. You just cannot go door to door that much, right? I don't even know if you can do it being a project manager. Maybe being a COO, you maybe can. But the higher up mindset level you go, the less you work and the more money you make. So what does this have to do with your question? I feel like my superpower, or maybe a better word that I use, is like, I feel most aligned today in that architect role. And I have always been in the other 3. I've DIY'd it at BiggerPockets and in my own real estate. I have project managered it at BiggerPockets and in my own real estate. And I have COO'd it never officially at BiggerPockets, but I've been like, that guy, and then in my own real estate. And I've never liked any of it. I've never felt good and aligned and like, this feels light and it feels amazing, until I finally understood what an architect is. And a lot of that was just hanging around with David Osborne and seeing what he did. And then all of a sudden I stepped into it and I built Open Door Capital from day one without me doing anything. Like that sounds ridiculous, but I never was like, I'm going to go analyze all these deals because I from day one, I was like, who's going to run this for me? And it started with Ryan Murdoch running it for me. And now today Ryan's on the board and we moved up Walker Meadows. Walker runs the whole thing for me. I meet with Walker once or twice a week, make sure he's doing this stuff. He runs the company. And that's why I feel so good and aligned and on fire and I'm in the right spot because I'm finally where I feel most aligned. So that's a very long answer to that. But
that was incredible.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Here's there's one thing I want to say, and then I want to ask this question. And it's funny you say that. I'm pretty sure it was Brian Murray that I bumped into at one of the GoBundance events, and he was saying like the thing he's learned from you is that. Like he considers himself maybe more COO, but he's like, the thing I get from Brandon is like, this is what I am and this is what I do. And I stay in that lane. Like I don't deviate. I don't take on COO or project manager or DIY responsibility in this company. That's not the highest and best use of me. So what you just said, man, that brings that conversation so full circle. And again, he watching you, learning from you. I'm pretty sure it was him. Said that exact thing about you. So
if he did, I mean, I've learned 1,000 times more from Brian than he ever learned from me.
Smart dude.
But Brian is a wicked smart dude.
But he got that from you. And even he talks about you being in your gift around, picking up a phone and, hey, talk 4 minutes on this thing. And like you said, you can do it, right? You can do that. Well, I resonate with that.
You can do it too.
For me, I can do that. I mean, I don't have the brand that you have yet, or I don't have the following.
You will, man. You will.
But there's two questions on this. One is, can anybody be an architect? Or is this just hey, are some people aligned at the COO level? Like architect would be that heavy for them. Like, can anybody be, should everybody aspire to be? Or is it like you said, none of these are wrong? Which one aligns with you? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. I think anybody can be, but I agree that some people might just feel heavy at the architect level because what an architect typically does is their job is to inspire and to attract. Gary Keller is another great example of an architect. Gary Keller, I mean, it's not that he doesn't work. I'm sure the guy works a ton of hours, the guy who founded Keller Williams, but like he is very much the visionary, sees what's going on. So, where was I going with that? So yes, you have to inspire. Yeah, you have to inspire, you have to attract, and you have to lead at like a cultural level. Like you have to get people on board and fired up with what you're doing. And some people just would not feel comfortable with that. They're way more comfortable having meetings every day with their team and holding people accountable. But they just need to recognize that either A, there's a limit to how high you can grow as a COO. You're likely always going to be like working 9 to 5. Like you're not working 4 hours a week being the COO of a company, most likely. And by the way, when I say COO, it doesn't necessarily mean that's your title. It's just the way I look at it, right? Yeah.
I get it.
So I think that you can be perfectly happy in any of these levels. In fact, I am DIY in some areas of my life right now, like that, and I'm perfectly happy there. There are areas of, like, for example, I would actually put myself more project manager. I have a vacation rental business out here in Maui. Like, I don't run that like an architect. I don't want to run it like an architect. I like being involved. And so I'm more project manager. I got one assistant. His name's Matt. Matt does all that stuff, but I still show up to the property when we're renovating it. I show up there. I've even had to hang all the stuff and had to do some painting and like, because I couldn't get a contractor there in time and people were coming to stay. And it was like, I was project manager. I have no problem with that. Because an architect, like, it requires some like level of like commitment to growing large, because it's kind of, it's, and it's riskier. Like if I was going to go be an architect, so here's how I would approach it. Let's say I wanted to approach the vacation rental business like an architect. By the way, the best way to figure out what the level would do is think about who's in that level. I said earlier, Richard Branson, David Osborne, Elon Musk. So ask yourself, WWDOD. What would David Osborne do? Right? WWDOD. What would David Osborne do? If David Osborne was going to go start a vacation rental business today, what would David do? I mean, I can't speak for David, but my guess is he would find somebody who's been in vacation rentals for a long time and had success with it, but had never scaled it. He would say, hey, why don't you come work for me? Take 50% of the company or 30% or 60% or whatever the percentage is. I'll give you my resources, my people, and I'm going to set some expectations of what I want to see. And I want you to go and hire 5 people underneath you, 2 contractors, an acquisitions person, and a bookkeeper, and you go run with it and run your company. but this is what I expect. I want to have 15 properties by the end of the year. Sound good? And that person would be like, yeah, that sounds great. And then David would check up on him a few months later or a month. Like that's what I imagine now. If David's listening to this, I'd love to know if I'm accurate or not. But when you ask that question, what would somebody in that role do? Now it helps you get a line. Oh, well, if I want to be there, then I better do that. So again, vacation rentals, that's what I would probably do. I'd probably go to my Instagram and say, who's really good at vacation rentals and wants to run my vacation rental business, apply here. I'd find one person. In fact, I'd have my assistant find that person and I would just do the final interview and I'll run with it.
All right. So let's get tactical a little bit on this. So let's say, I mean, you started out before Open Door Capital, you were making, your income from some BiggerPockets. You had a portfolio of real estate, right? But by all accounts, I don't think you were like rolling in it, let's say, right? Like, I don't think it was like, rolling in it. Almost sounds like weed in some way. Anyway,
I'm rolling it,
rolling it, not in rolling it, but yeah. So how do you start a company? So if somebody's listening and they're saying, okay, I make a decent living as W-2. I've got a couple of properties that I bought. And I resonate with this architect thing, man. That makes sense to me. This visionary, all of that stuff. I'm going to start a company, Two Doors Capital, whatever the hell it's going to be, right? Or Closed Door Capital. How do you bring on talent that can be compensated and all of that if you don't have the financial resources starting out in order to compensate people? Like, how do you enroll those people, good quality people, into that business as an architect?
Yeah, a couple of thoughts come to mind. First of all, it is harder with like the higher mindset level you go. It's also usually more expensive, right? If you're going to go hire 5 people right off the bat, it might cost you $500,000 a year. So it may. However, there's always ways around that. Now you may have to sacrifice some. For example, when I actually built Open Door Capital, when I started, I did not pay any salaries. I just like the first iteration of Open Door Capital 3 years ago was 3 people. It was me, Ryan, and one other gentleman who's super cool, but he ended up not working out. And we were like, let's just do third. We'll all split it a third of the way. Like Ryan takes a third, I take a third, he takes a third. And that was our plan. Now I was like, even in that point, I was still architect. I just had to give up majority of my company to be architect. That might be what you have to do at that level. Or just start at a lower level where maybe start at project manager instead of DIY, or start at COO and work your way up if you need to. But yeah, the way to do it is typically you give away equity or you be creative. And this also goes back to the value of having many people know, like, and trust you. Yeah. Even more importantly than raising money is my ability to raise talent. I once heard Gary Keller say something along those lines about like the primary job of a CEO is to attract talent. That's the number one task for CEO. And I'm probably butchering the quote, but it's so true. I mean, Dave, like when I think of David Osborne, he is a talent scout. That's what he does. And all the best people all the top, the genius people I know that are just wicked good at business, what they're good at is being a talent scout. That's what they're doing. They're always scouting for talent 24/7. They're looking for talent, looking for who they bring in their life to make wealthy. And notice that I said not that that's going to make them wealthy, but who can they bring into their life that they can make wealthy?
Yeah. David has an objective, I think, of 7 people reporting to him making $1 million a year. I think that's his title goal right now. And you think about Matt King. We both know Matt, his right hand. He's been on the podcast before. We talked about how an integrator could find, or a visionary could find an integrator and all that stuff. But Matt was that. His story was like, this guy said, I don't know how I'm going to use you, but I like you. I think you can add value. I'm going to pay you, $20,000. It wasn't much, but moved to Austin. And Matt said, yeah, let's go. And now Matt is, fast climbing as the right hand of David, if you will, and growing his business that way. Go ahead. Looks like you have a point to make.
Well, just that is such a good point to make there. It's very difficult to just bring on, like, let's say you want to start at architect level. Like David didn't start necessarily even in his own life with Matt as architect. Like he was like, Matt, I want you to be, COO of my life. I want you to run these 4 businesses. He didn't do that, right? Because he had no idea Matt King was going to be good. I had no idea Walker Meadows was going to be good. My COO right now, Walker, started as an unpaid intern for me. His only job was to help me underwrite some deals. And I brought on 10 interns. And he ended up like rising as like the leader of the interns. And so then we're like, well, do you want to come on as like our like assistant, like deal, like acquisitions guy? And then he did that. And then he became like the lead acquisitions guy. And then he got promoted from there. And now he runs the entire company. It's all under him. And he does an amazing job. We didn't know that at the time. Just like I had 3 partners in the beginning, me, Ryan, the other guy didn't work out. Super good guy. Still love him. didn't work out. It just didn't fit. And you never know until you work with someone. And so I love finding ways to, and this is another thing I learned from BiggerPockets, but I love finding ways to just get people working with me and to find out like, how can we elevate them? How can we raise the people who are good? Which also circles back to our conversation earlier about being so good they can't ignore you. If you have a dead end job and you feel like you suck, like the job sucks, it's honestly because you suck. Like that's just what it is. Because if you're awesome, you wouldn't be doing that job. You would have been elevated by now. Because every single boss in the world is looking for good people. Every owner is looking for great people. Almost without,
that's one of those moments where I wish I had that graphic where like a bomb drops, like a nuclear explosion. That's such a great point. Like if you are that good, you wouldn't be there. It's on you. I love that accountability. That's incredible. And by the way, Walker Meadows, I wish I had a name like Walker Meadows, man. Like, being a 5'2" pasty white dude, like that would have been a great name to at least have credibility with, with women when I was younger.
It is a pretty suave name. Yeah, it's a suave name. It's pretty good.
It ain't.
He's a good dude.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So find ways to get people into your life, look for talent, find ways to start them doing simple tasks, elevate them as they work out well. Again, go back to let me go this way. Let's say you wanted to start an architect role and you wanted to start a flipping business and you wanted to make $1 million a year flipping houses profit. So what does an architect do? They'd bring in a CEO or COO or whatever to run the company. They'd bring in like the whole team. The COO would build a team. And they just, make sure that they're doing the numbers. As long as they're hitting the numbers, the team gets paid and the architect then doesn't have to worry about it. So that makes sense where like an architect isn't like out $500,000 a year just because he hired 5 people. He's only out a couple months until he gets the first paycheck, hopefully. And in a lot of businesses like flipping houses or other things like that, you get the cash pretty quickly coming in to be able to afford those people. So for example, today I've got 20 people on payroll at Open Door Capital, but we make more than enough to cover them through our acquisition fees by buying property. So as long as we hit our numbers, the money comes in. So I guess I'm just saying like, it's not that hard to be an architect. Even if you have to start DIY, you can elevate quickly, make it happen over 6 months, not 6 years, not 60 years.
Yep. And you're still providing returns. I'm a Open Door Capital Fund investor. And I just,
there we go. Thanks, man.
Amazing.
Thanks for being a member of the team.
Well, it's funny, interesting because you said it. Like, why would I? Like, we know each other, but like we're not around each other all the time. They text here and there and see each other at events or whatever. But yeah, the brand you built, the person I know you to be, at least, from what I see publicly, as well as the few interactions we've had privately. It's like, I have to place some capital here. Like, where do I want to put it? Like, I have Quantum Capital and partner in that. And of course I place capital there, but I want to diversify. And Open Door. In fact, it's funny, the last deal that you mentioned, like I got the email too late. Like, oh shit, they're already funded. Well, let me go on their website and you have a fund. So I was like, all right, I think I'm a C-class investor on that fund. But that's the point. Like that is that affinity based brand that you have that put me into your fund, to be honest with you. So.
Well, I appreciate you being in the fund. And closely related is this. I had somebody, this goes back to marketing a little bit, but I had a gentleman in my fund say something to me that kind of rocked my world. And I love it. And I'm not saying this to pat myself on the back. It's going to sound like a compliment to myself, but it's more about the point of what I'm trying to make here. He said, the reason I invested in Open Door Capital is because of how you talk about your wife online. The reason I invested in Open Door Capital, your real estate business, is because of how you talk about your wife. What? Like, how does that even make sense? But it does, because values is how you do anything is how you do everything. And so your persona online is being watched by people. So marketing is not just the letter you send to your investors that says, hey, fund my deal. It's not just the pitch deck you put together for the VC team or the mentor you want to take on. Marketing is everything of how you do your life. And so how you do everything. And so like, if people feel like they know me because they see me talk about my wife and my kids and Rosie and Wilder and my struggles and the fact that I have such a, my biggest self-esteem issue has always been my voice. I hate my voice. I think I sound horrible. I'm awful. Yet here I am, on one of the biggest podcasts in the world. Like, God has a sense of humor, obviously. But now people hear that and they're like, oh, I know Brandon. I get, because I am self-conscious about my voice too. I guess I can resonate with Brandon as a person. Yeah. And then that can, they'll give money to my fund and investment to me because they know I'm not going to just disappear, because they know that at least they have a pretty good indication of the kind of person I am compared to a lot of other just random people they could put their money with. So
I think vulnerability is it's like a currency, an undervalued currency in the space of personal branding, right? And I'm learning this as I kind of build my brand. And I watch you, and that's not blowing smoke or because you're the guest here. I watch and see like, what is he doing? And it's just raw. Like even a screw up, like when I record something and I'm going to put it out, like I put out a thing the other day, like a tweet that I repurposed as an Instagram post, had like 8 misspellings. Like key words, like big words, like identity said identify. It's like your identity, and it said your identify. And I'm looking at like, whatever, man. That's just, I was in a moment. I had this thought. I wanted to get it out quick. I didn't review it. Maybe that's a mark on me for not doing so, but I just put it out. But to your point, I think there's a lot to say about being vulnerable and authentic and putting stuff out there. And truthfully, we talked a moment ago about value alignment. Like I partnered with Mark Henteman because I met him in GoBundance.
Love that.
Got Quantum Capital. Mark's an amazing dude, big time writer, all that stuff. But his values were around contribution and giving and making sure others get before he does and all of that stuff. And I see the life he's built. So it's like, I'm so drawn to that, as well as you and your brand. Here's my question for you. When did you feel, did you ever, maybe do you now still feel confident in saying, hey, this is what I'm great at? And really own that without feeling silly or like you're being judged. Like, for instance, I say, man, if you ask me what truly I feel like my purpose in life is, especially my job, like I really feel like I'm built to inspire and motivate others to live their best life. But I feel goofy saying that sometimes, even now. Like, who do you think you are? Tony Robbins? Like, what is this? Like, but you own this role. And I love that you do. You own this role of architect, visionary. You know who you are. Is that something you struggle with admitting, or do you feel fully confident in who you are, what value you bring to the world? And when did you feel like you were able to say that confidently without shirking or being shy about it, if ever? Maybe you always were able to.
Yeah, that's a good question.
That means you don't understand the question.
I got it. The day I can tell you the day that I felt like I confident saying it was the day I put in my notice at BiggerPockets. Just now, like I never felt really comfortable saying it until I kind of proved it, I guess. I left. And even like you made a comment earlier about how my content has like changed a bit over the last couple of months. Yeah. I think there's a confidence that come with like, I did it. We at BiggerPockets, we actually call it graduation. When somebody leaves to go pursue real estate full time, we call it graduation. I graduated from BiggerPockets to do like, the next level. And I was like, all right, now like I feel like I can talk. I mean, I can fake confidence all day long, but like I feel pretty darn good right now about this. I like what I'm doing and what works. Now, do I always do it right? Not at all, right? Like what? I'm still DIYing stuff every day. But I feel so much more confidence in this. Like I am in my spot. I am here. I'm in this role. And the thing that actually makes me like fall out of it is when I start feeling like, oh, I should be doing more work, or because, oh, my team's out there actually doing the work, I should be helping them. It's like, imagine like a general in a war, right? You got the general, lieutenant, and you got the cadets at the bottom, right? Imagine like the cadets are out there shooting guns on the front line, they're out there shooting, and they look over and there's a general sitting right next to them, right in the foxhole, just shooting, right? Now on movies, that might be like, yeah, he's down there in the thing, but who's planning? Like, who's in the back? Nobody is. And so now they get overrun and they all die, right? The cadets would be like, what are you doing down here? Like, we don't want you here. We want you building something at a higher level. So whenever I start to feel guilty about not doing the actual like day-to-day grind, that's when I tend to slip out of it. I start feeling guilty, and I have to remember that I am a general. And I actually use that term. This is going to sound stupid, but like I constantly ask myself, is this what the general would be doing? That's a phrase I say to myself 100 times a day, maybe 20 times a day. Is this what a general would be doing in my life? If my life is a war and I'm the general of it, is this what the general should be doing? And a lot of times the answer is no, but the more I ask it, the more clarity I get on that. And the more I can live in that identity of being the leader versus feeling guilty for not doing the DIY. And I put in my dues.
Yes, no, you absolutely have. And I love you have this pattern of reflection that you've talked about. What would David Osborne do? How would a general handle this? Right. Like, I love that pattern of reflection. It makes me think about this other line of questioning. I have a couple things here, but, and by the way, I think I said to you like, maybe we won't take the whole time.
Oh, we will always we are taking the whole time. Yeah,
You agreed to it. So
I
I'm gonna
have
take full
never,
advantage.
I have never finished a podcast early or on time. So,
Well, good. Well, like meets like. I love it. So, how about right now? Like, what are some of the, like, you've talked, your content, especially recently, has been more focused on, mindset, habits, that sort of thing, which I love. That's why I said to you when I messaged you that time, like, man, this content has been like a level up. Not that it was bad before, but it just, I can feel something behind it, right? I could feel like this energy in you behind it, just as somebody who's watched you for so long. What are some of the habits right now that you're fully focused on, or maybe a lead domino habit that you have right now? Like, is there anything that you're doing tactically that's allowing you to be in this flow state right now that you feel links back to habits that you're executing on?
Yeah, a couple things. I mentioned this when I was on the Graham Stephan podcast, a few weeks ago, but I'll say it again now, is I'm really intentional right now about adding margin in my life. And when I say margin, and I actually wrote this in the Behind the Beard, I think it comes out, it was this week's or next week's Behind the Beard is about margin. But margin, like if you have a page, right? You have a book, you open up a book and there's a page there. Like there's a margin all around the outside of the book. There's also space in between every line. There's also space in between every word. There's space in between every letter, right? All that is margin, meaning space. And you see, like without margin, it's just ink. It's just a blot of like unintelligible like letters and words, right? It's margin that gives our lives the meaning and the beauty and the order and the progress and moving forward. And so I've been very intentional lately about adding more margin in my life, margin in my hours. Like I'm taking time every hour if I can to just breathe, taking time in my day. Like every morning, I start every morning with a minimum 30 minutes of like margins, not just silence. And like, I'm not just sitting in a room humming, my life is great. But like, I've got like a routine. I actually have a 10-step routine I do every single morning. It starts very first thing I have it actually written down. I look at it every morning, even though I know it. Drink a full glass of water. First thing. Second thing, make a cup of coffee and actually go through the process of making it. It's kind of a meditative kind of thing. And then it's like read one chapter of a business book. This is not in order, but read one chapter of the Bible. Pray, meditate for 5 minutes. A few other ones on there anyway, like 50 jumping jacks, whatever. I've got like this list of 10, right? And that space in the morning helps align my day. Then in my week, I take Friday night to Saturday night off completely. No phone, no work, no shopping, no buying stuff, no anything. It's a complete day of rest. It kind of borrows from the ancient Jewish like idea of like Shabbat or Sabbath. Yep. Of like, let's just take a full, like, and like if you go to Israel, like you can't even push like an elevator button. In some places in like New York and other cities where there's a lot of Jewish influence, like you can't even, like the elevators will just hit every single floor because they don't even press a button on the elevator. Now I don't go quite that far, but the idea of like this day of rest is not some like legalistic, like do this because, you have to, because it's a religious, no, it's margin. That's all it is. It's like, as I heard a writer say, it's like a governor on your car. It's a governor on your week. It says like, you can only go this fast. Like we're not going to let you go any faster. So taking time off in my week, taking that margin in my year by having intentional long breaks. Like I'm about to go on a 3-month road trip shortly, all around the country. Should be a good time. So I'm adding these like margin areas in my life. That's a big habit that has improved my life. The second thing is you mentioned the idea of like a domino lead habit. I think a lot about that. What are the habits in our lives that affect a lot of other areas of our life? Like there are habits like, okay, I want to stop drinking soda. That affects I don't really drink soda, but if let's say I did, like that's like one habit that's good to focus on. But that one habit only affects one result, my weight, really. It's not going to improve my marriage by me drinking less soda. So what are the habits? What's a couple habits that if I do them, all areas of my life are better? I'll give you 3 examples of my own life. Number 1, when my relationship with my wife is good, every other area of my life is good. Right? Like I eat better when we're happy, we're having a great like marriage. Like I eat better. I'm a better father. I exercise more. I have more fun and joy. I like my work more. I like my day. Everything is better, right? So that's like one thing. If I focus on my relationship with my wife, every other area improves. Number 2, journaling. Like when I do my morning like journal, I actually wrote my own journal. It's called the Intention Journal from BiggerPockets. They sell it there. But I literally like went through like 20 different people's journals or 10. I bought them all. I went through each one for like 3-month process over the course of several years. took all the best things and put it in my own journal. I even printed my own. And then after a while I had BiggerPockets make them and sell them. But like, I just was like, I built my own journal. And again, you can do the same thing. You don't have to use mine. You can just get a routine that gets you to like write your goals down in the morning. Where are you headed? Like what's going to stop you today? And then tracking your habits, like all that's included in that. So number one was a relationship with my wife. Number two was the habit of journaling. Number three is waking up by 6 a.m. If I wake up by 6 a.m., every other area of my life improves. So I track it meticulously. I actually track like 6 habits at a time. And I track, did I do them every day? And so I say, did I wake up by 6 a.m.? Did I work out at least 5 times? And I do it by the week. So did I work out 5 times this week? Did I go on at least 2 dates with my wife? Did I whatever, take a whole day off of the phone? Like I track that stuff because those are the lead habits that are going to affect the rest of my life.
Is there, I love that. I that's such a great point about like the relationship with your wife. I'm the same. If everything's going well there, if I'm really invested there, I just feel better about doing everything I want to.
Yeah, everything else. Yeah.
Right. It's so true. I'm just, this is a kind of a curiosity question because I think about all the things that you've done and created. It's in your bio, right? Best-selling author, the podcast, the intention journal, all this stuff. Is any of that force of will? Like if I look back at what you've left on in the world, right? The books you've left, the intention journal, the content, whatever. When you track back, like you writing books, are you just in like, I want to write a book, I'm going to do this. Is that how a guy at your level, a guy that's achieving, a guy that's in a peak performance state, are the things that you've done in the past that now are, best-selling books and intention journals, all this stuff, are those because you were in flow every time, or were any of these things just sheer force of will? Did you have to will yourself to any of the things that have been successful in your life? Or has it all been because you're in a flow state with those? That's
a great question. I'll put it this way. So I just picked up the book, Will. It's the Will Smith autobiography.
Oh yeah. I get that.
Yeah. I only just started. I read like 3 chapters so far, but in the first chapter, Will Smith tells a story, and he says that when he was a young child, him and his brother were forced basically to build a brick wall in their like garage that then they fell down. So they had to build a wall, and brick by brick had to do everything themselves. Like the dad would tell the boys, like, do it. So every day after school, weekends, whatever, they were just building this wall brick by brick. And Will's complaining to his dad one day and just saying like, Dad, this is going to take forever. We've been working on this for like a year now. And this wall will never get done. And his dad basically like slaps him upside the head and says, that's because you're looking at the wall. Don't look at the wall. Just put up the next brick. And Will uses that metaphor in the same way that I will, is that like, that life is not, when you look at like a big thing, like writing 6 books or whatever, building a $300 million open door capital, whatever. It seems overwhelming. That's the wall. But in reality, it was all just little bricks. Like everything was little bricks. And there's tips and tricks that make the brick laying easier. But I'll give you an example. When it comes to writing a book, it's actually pretty easy, because all I do is I write down the outline. I go to Starbucks. I write the whole outline in one day. It's super easy. Just write an outline. It's just like, okay, what do I want to talk about? And I don't leave Starbucks. That's one like sheer like will day that I cannot leave Starbucks until the outline is done. It takes 4, 5, 6 hours. I've got every chapter. I've got the subchapters. I've got a little description of which subchapter is going to be. And if you just sit there for 6 hours, anybody here can do the same thing. And I put each one on a note card. So at the end of the day, I've got roughly 10 chapters and 10 subchapters. So there's a chapter on financing. And then what do I want to talk about financing? How about FHA loans? Okay, great. So I've got the chapter financing, and I've got a note card that says FHA loan. On the backside of the note card, it says FHA loan, down payment requirements, other lending requirements, the 1 year, you have to live in the property for 1 year, blah, blah, blah. I've got like 3 or 4 or 5 bullet points in there. So now each note card is a brick. All I have to do is sit down and write 500 to 1,000 words about that note card. That's it. So every day I show up and I'm like, okay, today I'm writing about FHA loans, and here's my outline. I guess I got to talk about this, and this with them. All right. And I can knock it out in about 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 40 minutes. And then it's done. And then I close my computer and I go inside and I go do something else. The same is true for Open Door Capital. We have bricks. It's called analyzing real estate deals. We try to analyze a certain number. We make a certain number of offers, roughly 70 offers a quarter. Each one's a brick. So we don't worry about it. We're not looking at the wall. We're not saying, we got to buy $1 billion of real estate. No, we got to make an offer today. That's it. We got to make an offer. We got to analyze the deal. So yes, it's force of will, but it's almost more of like force of habit. Like I just lay the bricks and the stuff tends to get done over time. And when I look back, I can now be like, dang, that's a big wall. That's cool.
Great analogy, man. I love that. I gotta get that book too. It sounds like that's
I know. I wish I invented that analogy. It's like that's like a level like David Green analogy right there. That's really good.
Yeah.
Will Smith might have a career in like storytelling. He should look into that. I think he could do well as an actor.
Yeah, he could be famous one day. I think
he could.
In West Philadelphia.
Yeah, born and raised. Right? Oh, I think so.
Yeah, that's so cliche. So like 35 to 45-year-old so good, suburban kid. Stupid comment there, but
he does make the same joke in the book. He says, I should have started this with West Philadelphia, born and raised, but I didn't. And he goes, anyway.
Smart man that he didn't. Okay. All right. Well, we're almost up against it here. I wanted to do a couple of things. We have the GoBundance card game question I'm going to ask at the end here, but if you're cool with it.
Is that the one we get naked for?
Yes. No, we would be naked before it.
Okay, good. Okay, good.
I love that podcast idea, by the way. I think we need to. That might be a future.
The naked investor
collab.
Yeah.
I like it. I got to layer up though because
you got to take one layer of clothing every time. Like David Green does an analogy. You just take off a layer of clothing. Perfect.
Yeah. I need a lot of clothing.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to see that. But let's do you're just off the BiggerPockets podcast. How about you want to run through a famous four?
Let's do it.
All right. So give me your favorite real estate book at this point. What is it?
Favorite real estate book? I'm going to throw in there. Other than the ones I've written, of course, because I think my books are pretty darn good. There's a book called The Unofficial Guide to Real Estate Investing by Spencer Strauss. And there's another author in there. I feel bad if you're listening to this and you're the other author. I forgot your name. But The Unofficial Guide to Real Estate Investing. The Unofficial Guide is like a whole series of books, like Unofficial Guide to Sewing or Underwater Basket Weaving, kind of like the Dummy's Guide. Yeah. But that book was just phenomenal. I remember I read it when I was like 20, and it was like the best, like clear, like layout of like a career in real estate and how it compounds over time to build wealth. I just thought it was super like nerdy and cool. So that's still one of the first books I ever read and still one of my favorites.
I love it. What is it? Non-real estate or business book? Is that what the second question is?
Yeah. They're so, I could name,
I know you've read a ton.
Right? I do a lot of reading.
So what's like in your mind when you say like this book right now is resonating with me?
Those two books changed my life. I would read them and then read them again and read them annually. The E-Myth by Michael Gerber is phenomenal. It's a little bit of a weird book, but it's so good in helping you become more of the architect. Really, like that's a lot of the book is about. It's about that concept. The book Traction. If you have a team of people that work with you, there's a book called Traction by Gino Wickman that helps you know how to run a company. It's like this is the manual, the Bible for running a company. We run our entire Open Door Capital on the EOS framework, which is what Traction teaches. There's a great book out there. It is called, where is that? The Power of Moments by Chip and Dan Heath. Chip Heath and Dan Heath, The Power of Moments. It's a great marketing book on like people remember magical little moments. So if there's little things you can do in your business to make people, to make your company stand out or who you are stand out, that's the stuff that matters. Like taking a picture with my shirt off and that kind of
great
stuff.
Great marketing. It'll be out soon.
Yeah, it's great marketing. So those are pretty good ones.
It will be on my Instagram feed. You got to go back and watch it by the time this releases. I don't want to ask about hobbies because I think we all know what they are. Like, I probably don't know all.
Yeah, surfing and jiu-jitsu.
You talked about this trip. What's this trip about? Like, how did you map it? Is it an RV type trip? If you don't mind giving me a little bit of detail of what you're planning to do. Yeah,
I'm going to get an Airstream and a truck and just drive from Phoenix to Seattle, the long way around. So we'll go from Phoenix. I gotta be in Phoenix for an event. And then I got to be in Florida like 3 weeks later for a wedding. And then so I'm like, I might as well just drive it. And then I'm like, well, if I'm going to drive that far, I might as well go visit my brother in Boston. And I'm like, as long as I'm in Boston, I might as well go see my parents in Minnesota. And as long as I'm in Minnesota, I might as well just drive over to Coeur d'Alene to see my good friend, Adam. And then as long as I'm going to be there, I might as well go back to the in-laws in Seattle. And so I'm just going to do a nice long 2 or 3 month trip with the kids and the family and explore everything I can. So
I love it.
Maybe I'll be coming through your town. You never know.
Yeah. Well, hey, if you're in Michigan, you know where to reach me.
I'm going to avoid that state. No, actually, I got some mobile home. I got actually a number of mobile home parks in Michigan. So I will be actually driving through Michigan. The goal is actually to hit as many of my mobile home parks as I can along the way.
Yeah. That's amazing.
Marketing. Good marketing.
That's awesome. Yes, it is. And if you need anything along the way, you just let me know. And then the last one.
I will. I'm staying in your house. So just,
we have room. You guys are more than welcome.
Park in the Airstream right in your front yard. It's going to be great. Big
The neighbors will
truck.
love it.
Yeah, they're gonna love it. It's gonna be great.
They'll love it. It's all right. We're at the end of a cul-de-sac, so it's a dead end.
Yeah,
There's
perfect.
no traffic comes down this
I
way.
can just park in the middle of the road then. Who cares? That'd be
Who
great.
gives a crap? Exactly. What about this last question about the thing that the difference between what successful investors and those that give up, fail, and never get started? What is your take on that?
They're lucky.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
All right, cool. We'll move on.
So to a degree, that's true. Let me tell you a story about luck.
Sure.
So one of my favorite things to do in Hawaii, in Maui, is called whale. Well, we call it whale hunting. You're not literally hunting a whale, but what we do is we grab a bunch of paddle boards or kayaks, but I like paddle boards. And you do this during the winter when we get the humpback whales are everywhere out. Like right now, I can look at the ocean where I am right now, and if I sat here staring for like 10 seconds, I'd see a whale. They're amazing. So kayak or paddleboard, you just paddle out into the ocean about a mile, maybe 2 miles out. Pretty sketchy, a little bit nervous the first time, but you're fine. The waves are usually pretty small in the morning. So you're paddling out there with a whole bunch of people. And what you're doing is you're looking for the whale, the signs of the whale. So you see the whale spout, like the mist, like on the top of it. Or you see a whale jump, and that's one of the best things ever. And they're like, half mile away. But what you do is you watch that whale and you see which way the whale is going. Now, you cannot get within 100 yards of a whale. You can't go and approach a whale, get within 100 yards of them. That's a rule. But whales, they don't have that rule. They can get within 100 yards of you. So here's the key to whale hunting is you look at the direction the whale is going, and then you try to just get way in front of it. And if you're lucky, the whale is going to come up right next to you. And I've been within like arm's reach of these massive, like school bus sized whales. They've been underneath me. They've been all around me. I've watched calves like, nursing on their mother out there. It is the most incredible experience I've ever done. And the adrenaline's pumping because you're like, I could die at any second if this thing jumps and crushes me. Yeah. It is the craziest experience. Now, why do I tell that story? So here I am out in the water, sitting next to a whale, and the thing's like flapping his tail and jumping. And the people sitting on the beach, they're looking out there and they see me on a paddleboard a mile offshore next to a whale. And what do they say to themselves? Lucky. Man, look at that guy. He's lucky. Now, am I lucky? 100%. Yes, I'm lucky. There is no guarantee. And in fact, the last 3 times I've gone out whale hunting, I've not gone within a quarter mile of a whale. I've not gotten close. I've not gotten lucky. However, more often than not, we get lucky because I got the paddleboard. I hauled it onto my truck. I drove down to the water. I threw it in the water. I then paddled out past the break. I then went out as far as I could. I looked for the direction of the whale. I got in front of it, and then I waited. And then I waited, and then I waited, and then it didn't come. And so I see another whale, and I go paddle in front of that one, and I wait, and I wait, and I wait. And then finally it pops up, and I am lucky. It is 100% luck that a whale pops up next to you. Yet we have I'd call it a 95% ability to influence that luck. So what separates successful people from those who give up, fail, or never get started? It's luck. It's luck, but they put themselves in the way of it.
Man, another mic drop moment there. I love that. That's incredible. And it's so true. That's so true. That's a great analogy or story for it. So, all right, let's wrap this with a question from the GoBundance card game. And the question is, what would your employees say?
This is a story all about how rap, W-R-A-P. I thought it was, yes. I thought it was R-A-P. I thought you wanted me to rap. And
well, if you'd like to.
Right.
I know, you're a singer too. You're a Renaissance man. You do a little bit of everything.
I don't rap. That's for sure.
You just did though. You just kind of anyway.
I just did. That's true.
What would your employees say are your greatest opportunities for improvement?
I talk too much. On podcasts, I definitely talk too much. I don't know. What would they say? There's a lot. I'm really bad at negative feedback. I never give people negative feedback. I'm so bad at it. That's why I hire a COO. He can give everyone negative feedback. But I never tell people to do things better or that they did a bad job. And most of the time my team doesn't because they're awesome and they're rock stars, but I could improve on the giving people negative feedback because they need it. Like the general sometimes has to tell the cadet he's shooting in the wrong direction. But I'm more, my instinct is when I see the cadet shooting in the wrong direction, I'll be like, hey, good job. And then I'll just go pick up a gun and start shooting in the right direction to compensate for his wrong direction shooting rather than go and yell at the guy and tell him to turn around and shoot the right way.
I think that's a downfall of like the whatever you want to call it, like the extrovert, the I in
the high I. Yep.
Right. Yeah. Like that whole thing.
That's
That's
me.
me. Same thing. Like I would rather like, nah, let's figure out how we can do it better. That's all, as opposed to like, this was bad. Like I hate those conversations.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have to have them,
idiot.
but I hate it. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. And there's a nice way to do it, obviously, but yeah.
Well, look, I don't know who isn't already that's listening to this podcast, but if people wanted to follow you, learn more about you, where do you want to direct them? Whether it's the text platform, your Instagram account, what's the best way for people to learn more about you and learn more about what you're doing over the next few months, especially?
Yeah, you can follow me by going down to Alua Beach, usually on Saturday mornings, and we'll go whale hunting. You can follow me right out there. It'd be great. Digitally, if you want to follow me, Beardy Brandon over on Instagram and TikTok and probably other places, but Beardy, beard with a Y. By the way, I once told somebody Beardy Brandon. I was like, beard with a Y. And so they're like, okay, BYRD Brandon. I'm like, no, Beardy, like Y at the end. So apparently when I say beard with a Y, I have to say like beard and a Y.
And a Y Brandon. At the end. Right.
Yeah.
Wait,
beard, Y, Brandon. It could be like Spanish.
Oh.
Beard E. Brandon.
Beard and Brandon.
Yeah, Beard and Brandon. Beard Y Brandon. That's Spanish. I never thought of that.
Sounds like a meal you'd get like at a local
Beard and Brandon.
Beard and Brandon. Yeah. Well, have you ever is that beard ever potentially coming off?
Never. I will die with this beard to my toes.
Is it because of the brand? Like if you don't
I grew the beard because of the brand. That was an intentional choice. I literally was like, I'm like every other average looking, tall, lanky, skinny white dude in the world who's not so skinny anymore. But I'm like every other looking guy. And I'm like, how do I stand out? How do I make myself look different and people to remember me? How do I not just be the same? And so I thought if I grew a beard, I might stand out. And
I just thought about like tall, skinny, well-known people with a long beard. There's one other guy that jumps to mind that I don't think you'd want to be associated with.
Ooh, probably not then.
Bin Laden. Just, throwing that out there.
Oh, is he tall? Oh man, this is coming off
6'8". He was, he was.
Get me scissors right now. We're taking it off.
I don't know why that went to my brain. It's like, there's no cover. So things just kind of come directly out of the air into the brain. There's nothing like to filter it before I think and say stupid things. So
it's good. And he's dead. So I'm the only one left. Like I said earlier, right? This is a full circle interview. In the beginning, I said, you can't be another Jamie Gruber out there. Yeah. You have to kill him. And so there can't be another Brandon Turner, tall bearded looking thin guy. Yeah. So we killed him.
Yeah, hey, I appreciate you doing that. I know you're about to go kind of off the grid for a bit. I love that you jumped on. I appreciate you taking the time as always. It's great connecting with you. I appreciate not only the discussion, you don't even realize what you said to me in Steamboat, how much that unlocked me as well as the stuff I follow with you. So I really, truly appreciate the time with you today.
Well, I'm sorry that the hair growth methods I gave you didn't quite work, but keep trying, man.
I just keep shaving it down. All right, man. We'll see you soon.
See you later. Thank you.